Lovely one. Please give her a round of applause. Also to her supporters as well, the volunteers who have supported her to ensure that this event is well packaged. I do appreciate all of you. Thank you for the very warm hospitality. The Nigerian community, thank you very much for the reception. The Yoruba community, wonderful. I enjoyed the talking drum. I feel quite honored. Thank you very much. Legacy of change, from vision to lasting impact. I think that's the theme for the keynote. It so happens that Chief Obasanjo and I are from the same place in Yoruba land. He's Balogun. Balogun is the general, if you like, Chief of Defense Staff. He's also the Prime Minister. So it's just fitting that I can roll keynote speeches into one. There are four key parts to this theme: legacy, change, vision, lasting impact. And it's also good that we had panel sessions earlier today which speak to some of this. And I'm quite happy that Cecilia has deemed it necessary to celebrate those who have made lasting impact, those who are visionaries, those who have been successful, albeit in businesses, especially coming from Africa and from Europe, other parts of the world, to Finland, and they made successes. And I'll give you a bit of context to my own vision and legacy that I'm driving. When you think about the world and the turmoil that we've had over time, let's start from First World War, Second World War. Go to the Gulf War, Second Gulf War, the war in Europe, Ukraine, the war in the Middle East, whatever you find it. Or even the mass migration that we have. What is the basis? It's a case of the haves and have-nots, the powerful and the weak, the big and the small. And in each of these cases, it's this big divide in the spectrum, and the one that has a stronger hand either not showing sufficient compassion towards the one that's weaker, or deliberately oppressing the one that's weaker. And when you have that, it results in injustice or perceived injustice. And when there's injustice, it gets to a point where the one that's been unfairly treated reacts. The one who feels he or she has nothing to lose. The one who feels that he or she is already in the lowest part, so nothing else. So, and usually when such a person reacts, the one that used to have the stronger hand becomes uncomfortable. My language, we say in that case, ara urokun, already, which means the bird that perches on the line, a wire line. The bird is uncomfortable, the wire on which it perches is not comfortable. And that's what we see all over the world. When you think of Finland, you see it's very stable, safe, right? Why is that? Because you don't have that big divide. People can feed themselves, they don't have to go hungry. You don't have to be a millionaire or be wealthy for you to be able to afford a good education for yourself or for children. And you can have medical care, whatever the ailment you have, without having to bust a bank or having to take a loan, unlike in other parts of the world. When you have this, you have very little divide between the haves and have-nots, the powerful and not so powerful. then you will not have the kind of problems you have in the larger part of the world. And that's the basis for the peace, the security, and all of the things that we enjoy in Finland today. If we're able to achieve that in the bigger world, we'll have a much better society. So that's kind of context, a lot of context to my own part. When I took on this role as Olowu about 3 years ago, I had not lived in my fatherland, that's in my part of the country, since I was very small. I wasn't born there anyway. But when I got there 3 years ago, I said, what? Is it this bad? And all my life, I thought I had done public service. In fact, I won awards all over, in the US, in Europe, in Nigeria, for public service. I thought I'd done very well. But when I got there 3 years ago, I thought, wow, I haven't even started. These are my people. The divide is so much. And by the way, for those who know Nigeria, or who happens to be the one that has produced probably per capita the largest number of the most successful, whether it's in governance, whether it's in commerce, whether it's in the professions, whatever you think about, we happen to have some of the largest number, constituting number, our size compared to the population. How come it is in our place that you have this kind of big divide between the haves and the have-nots? So I was determined to change that. So that was the vision I had, and that's the legacy I'm driving. So what have we done? When you have that kind of vision, you know that there are some people who will have been benefiting from the chaos, from discomfort of others. Just like you see in the larger part of the world, where there are some who are very wealthy at the expense of the masses. In fact, a long time ago, one of the big chiefs told me that one of the much elderly chiefs, some 50, 60 years ago, told him that when you become a chief, there are three things you use it for. Number one, you make yourself wealthy. You exploit it. And he was very brazen about this. The second thing, you create confusion in the society. Because it's when there's confusion that you can benefit from it. And the third thing, you pose around, you strut, yes, we are the chiefs. You know, it's a prestigious thing as a chief. He said, those are the three things. And this person who told him, the person I'm talking about is over 90 now. So he was in his prime when he was being told this story. And he demonstrated this to him in very clear terms. So I said, well, I'm going to have to change that. And when we're changing that, and they're working to stop people who are chiefs, who believe in these three things, you know you are up against a very, very big, very powerful enemy. Especially coming from outside, because I was an outside essentially when I came in. But I said, yes, it has to be done. Not under my watch will you have such wide divide. But the first thing you don't have to do is to be sure that you are determined that whatever it takes, you have to stick to your gun. The other thing is that you must have very strong allies. Otherwise, it will be foolhardy to fight against very powerful forces. Because, you know, if I can use the word, injustice and corruption will fight back to retain whatever it is that they're benefiting from. So I need to have very powerful allies with me, which means I must have the confidence of people who believe in my cause, who also agree that this is a cause worth fighting for. The third thing, I must be resilient, because you can't do it halfway. I must also come clean as well, because as they say, you preaches equity must come with clean hands. So the courage has to be there. So while I got in, the number of things we started to do. You see children who should be in elementary school, but they are not in school simply because they cannot afford to have 1 meal a day. The parents cannot give them a meal a day. Think about that. You have 7, 8, 9-year-old kids who are not able to attend school or to even learn a trade or a skill because the parents cannot afford to give them a meal a day. That's serious. So we have to start what we call a meal a day program for elementary school. Provide 1 meal per day. That in itself will attract the children back to school, and then when they are fed up properly, nutritious meal, they can then concentrate and learn. So that's one of the things. However, if their parents have the resources, they will be able to feed them. And when you see this category of families, usually women are the economic mainstay of such families. So which means you also have to empower the women. In my former life, they call me champion of he for she. Because I believe, for the most part, we have not properly integrated our women into the workforce. We have not given them sufficient opportunity to contribute to the society in leadership roles, in economic roles. So I've always had to do that. As a matter of fact, I got to a point where I last worked, where about 80% of my staff were women, and I got a bit worried. Imagine when all the men go on maternity leave at once. Where would I be? So I thought, if we need to do something about these meals a day, we need to empower the women. So we began to give them grants. But then you can't do that forever. I mean, there's so much you can give out for free. So at the point we said, well, we'll make it interest-free loan. Give them the loan, they don't have to pay the interest, and it's very flexible. And you put them into groups whereby they become kind of guarantor for each other. And I tell you, for the first batch we made, not one of the women defaulted once, not one. So that kind of vindicated our belief, and then, with that we began to expand the scope. So, women empowerment. There's also the issue about skills acquisition for the youth. Began to look for people whether it's furniture making, whether it's fashion designing, whether it's welding, CNC machining, and all sorts, shoe making, all sorts of trades, to begin to find opportunities for our youth to become, if you like, trainees, 6 months, 9 months, and once they are done, we then give them tools or funds to set up. Again, part of the economic empowerment. Healthcare. While there are, maybe decent private healthcare system, when people do not have the funds to buy medicine, what's the point going to hospital? They can't. As a matter of fact, there have been occasions where you find people who are very ill and they refuse to go to hospital because they cannot afford even the cost of the consultation. So all they did was, some people said, let's go and build hospitals. I said, it's going to take a while to do that. There is get approval, get staff, build the infrastructure, get staff, and all of that. It's going to take 2-3 years to do that. But people will begin to die. So we said, I think the first to do is to provide free medical insurance to most of this, the most deserving, the most indigent. So we kicked that off as part of free healthcare service. And some of the private healthcare systems that we have, we decided to just upgrade them to as much level that will cater to the needs of this world. So we did that as well. So that also, made it a very quick takeoff for the primary healthcare system as well. And then we also have, I'm a very passionate, conservation, green conservationist. I said, we must not say because people do not have sufficient resources, then we do not take care of our environment. So again, right now, we have probably the only green palace in the world. The only one. To the extent that the excess power that we generate, we give it to public infrastructure, the hospital, the public boreholes, and a few other public utilities, because we believe, we also begin to think, again, and that also interests me when, Alemo, and one of the people who are talking about, this green thing, conservation. So I've been working with most conservationists to ensure that we train our children about the importance of taking care of our environment. So don't think because you're struggling now, you can just decimate the environment, because you're going to hurt yourself in the long run. You may have, for now, the immediate relief, but by the time you are relieved and you have a bit more resources, you find out you've destroyed your tomorrow, and you cannot afford to do that. So we also train the children around this as well. So 4 pillars essentially: healthcare, economic empowerment, then education. Education. Now, we find that there are quite a number of these children, the parents who cannot even afford to give their kids a meal a day. How will they be able to afford this education? So we decided to give scholarship to as many deserving kids in primary school, as elementary school, and then in high school, as much as we can. And we've done this over the last 3 years, quite a large number. The whole idea is that over this period of 10 years, we want to impact at least 1 million lives. At least 1 million lives. So far, we have impacted probably 50,000, 60,000 based on what we've done in the last 2.5 years or so in this program. Again, doing all of this means that you're going to step on some big toes. Absolutely, big toes. As a matter of fact, I remember on one occasion, one very powerful person called me and said, Kabiyesi, people have come to report you that you are blocking their means of livelihood. And I said, tell me about that. So, they make money through this means, but then you stop in and say, but it's wrong. What they're doing is wrong. You say, yes, I know Kabiyesi, but so, don't worry. I'll look for legitimate source of income for them. But I will not allow them to exploit poor people. Not under my watch. But don't worry, I'll provide for them. I'll open up for them that will be legitimate and clean. And that's how to manage that. But you see, people who are used to, all these not so good ways of making money, they don't want to change most of the time. So again, that was one of the things I had to fight. Again, so again, after a while, if you also find people who are in position, under me, also others who are under me, who will go and confiscate other people's land. They weave up stories, history. Most of the land are inherited, historically. They will put up stories, histories, and go and, fraud documents and say, yes, it's mine, and go and sell that people's land. I had to stop all of that. And that's big business in our part of the world. Land. It's a very big asset. And I'm sure land is also a big asset here as well. So you can imagine the kind of force I've had to deal with to stand, So again, with all of that, it's about courage. For me, it's not about just leaving something behind. It's about setting something in motion that when I'm gone, because we'll all be gone at some point, that thing will continue. People's lives have changed. People's psyche about how things should be done should have changed in such a way that they can continue doing the right thing. That is what I say as legacy. Not the amount of money I leave behind, I don't have that much anyway. Not the number of houses I leave behind, not the position that I attained, but what I leave people with that they can continue with. That for me, to be working on for the past 3 years, and I think to a large extent with the support of a lot of my chiefs. Some of them are here, a lot of people, even in diaspora. I've had very, very good support because they see through, they see that things are being set aright. And because most of them are also in diaspora, where most of these things are done right, they feel very happy that if things are set right, that way then there won't be so much migration, economic migration, outside of the country. And that's what we're doing. Ladies and gentlemen, what legacy do you want to leave behind? What change do you want to make? What vision do you want to drive? That will be a lasting legacy. You are not small. You are not poor. You are not insignificant. You don't have to be an Oba. You don't have to be a prime minister. You can start a change. We can all make it. And if you all drive that change positively, the world will be a better place. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.